Hey, thanks for joining me in today's video. And today what we want to do is go ahead and take a look at a few different ways to learn to trade options and also share with you kind of one of the ways that's the fastest. There's also trade-offs into doing one of these or the other. So we're going to go ahead and hop here on paper. I'm going to show you some insights to this and then maybe make your own judgment on what makes sense for you. Okay, so let's get started and take a look at a few things. Before we get going into that, I do want to let you know, I've worked with people over the years in teaching them how to trade options, and I've seen different ways that people learn. So this is where a lot of the knowledge is coming from. So if you're kind of wondering, hey, has he worked with people before? Yeah. So I do a lot of coaching. And if you're interested in that, check out the tradersfly.com website, and you can get some more knowledge and insight. But if you're trying to learn to do option trading, whether you're trying to make more money on the side, whether you're planning for retirement, there's a couple of ways to go about it. So let's go into those sections and chat a little bit more in this case. So there's three main ways the way I look at it from learning to trade options. Okay, the first way is probably most common way, DIY. This is kind of the first initial approach I took. It's one of the cheapest ways to do because you just, hey, I want to try it. I want to see what's going on. Is it worth it? It's cheap. It's a bit slow though, because what you're doing is it's based a little bit more on trial and error. And you're testing things out and you're hopping on, hopping off, you're tinkering around with it, kind of like a piano, but you have no real guidance. Okay. So DIY approach, one of the biggest advantage of it is it's cheap. But it's on your own terms and you can kind of dictate that. So it's your terms. Then what you can do is go hop over to a whole different world. And this is called mentoring. Okay. And this is what I do with a lot of folks this is one-on-one. Okay. Mentoring. So what you're doing is like it's having a private coach that works through all the different trades you need to go and see. It's just like police officers. They're running you through different types of scenarios. This is exactly what I do when it goes into 3 months of coaching. Like here I have single one-on-one sessions. So you can pay for a single session, but there's also where I work with people for 3 months, 6 months, and even a year at a time. Some people multiple years at a time because they're managing large portfolios, and we do a lot of brainstorming behind those portfolios. But this is a whole different ball game. We're meeting up every single week, and if you are interested in this, definitely take a look at the website. But what I'm saying here is that if you're looking at something like this, you're meeting one-on-one. Then what happens? You put on sample trades. We go over it together, just like you would as a piano teacher, house repair person. You're working with somebody side by side and you review those things. Okay. So we go ahead, review them, we discuss them, and I complement things with other things from our video courses. So basically it's full guidance, and each week you're kind of reviewing all those sample trades that you put on. Now, we do it on the paper platform because when things go against you, then in that case, we want to see, hey, well, what's going to happen if it does blow up in your face? And we want a few of those to blow up in your face so you know what's actually going to happen. But every week we're reviewing some positions, and you might put on, let's say, 3 to 5 positions, and then you review them. So as you put on those positions, you get more insight on what's going on, what's happening. And the more you do, the more you see, and we're putting them on fairly quickly. So anyway, that's kind of full mentoring. But what's the downside with this? Well, this is more expensive. Okay. But it's fast. There's a lot of guidance, but it's expensive, and it's faster though. Okay. And you're basically getting guidance on, getting some help on which direction and path to go specifically for you. Just like if you're looking to get into the medical field, it's nice to ask a medical professional and also somebody that knows you to get some guidance. So anyway, then what you have is kind of a hybrid approach. There's a hybrid approach to learning, and that I would say is a combination between DIY and mentoring. So when you have DIY overlapped with mentoring, what's happening is you have this other part in the middle that gets overlapped. In part, what you're doing is some coaching. So what you're doing is you're getting some guidance, but not full guidance. What you might do is have group classes here. You might have courses that you buy, And then what you're doing is you're meeting up with mentors as needed, or coaches, and you're meeting up with a handful of people, but it might be like once every month, once every 2 months. You're meeting up periodically, maybe not as often. So this is not the cheapest, but it's not the most expensive. It's, let's say, mid-range in price. Okay. It's also not the slowest, but it's also not the fastest way. So what it is like, it's a general, hey, cruise control speed, because you're getting some benefit from the mentoring one-on-one or coaching, and then classes, and you're creating a hybrid model where you are a little faster, but it's not as expensive as mentoring. So when you're starting to look at these things, there's really two big scopes of either doing it yourself or going to mentoring. And in between that, you have some complements that you can do with a hybrid approach. So what it comes down to, what I find for a lot of people, is it's a balancing effect between, if you look at it, you've got, let's say here, I've got, is it a question of time versus money? Okay. And this is what I see a lot of times what people do. People that have more money, oftentimes what they do is they go with mentoring. They don't have the time to deal with DIY because they're trying to do it as fast as possible to learn. They have a big portfolio or a larger size portfolio than the average. They might have a $1 million portfolio, $5 million, $50 million. So it ranges. They just don't have the time to deal with doing it on their own. And they have enough money to complement the fees of working with somebody. Other people that don't have as much time, well, in that case, they're doing kind of a DIY approach because, it's cheaper and they have more time at their disposal. So it becomes a balance between, hey, are you a person with more time? If you have more time, then you got a DIY approach. You might want to do it that way, but it's going to be slower. If you've got more money or enough capital to sustain yourself, then in that case, you say, hey, I don't have a lot of time. I got more money than time. Well, in that case, you might go with more mentoring. In your case, the larger the account, the more you'll probably want to go into the mentoring area, simply because it'll alleviate some problems. Or let's say you're just putting on $200,000 worth of positions, but you make, let's say, a $20,000 mistake. Well, that could have covered a lot of the coaching and mentoring that you could have invested, because you're doing things that maybe you're not prepared for, or educating yourself on, because maybe you're not trading accordingly. Maybe you've made money in other ways. Let's say it sold a business. You now have like an inheritance as well. Maybe you've gotten $3 million from your grandma, and now you're going in and trying to invest that money. Well, it'd be wise to really know what you're doing before you go ahead and step into the field of trading and investing, because otherwise it can be very dangerous. Anyway, so take a look at the Traders Fly website if you're interested for learning even DIY. There's a lot of courses there that you can use to benefit yourself, depending on if you're looking to do it yourself, use a hybrid approach model, or if you're looking for a full mentoring. Then definitely there's a lot of good resources here to start with, and you can take a look at all of these things here. Anyway, with that being said, hopefully it'll give you some insight to seeing what makes sense for you. It's important to look in the mirror and say, hey, this is what makes sense for me. I have more time, or I have more money. And, then you can make a judgment call of what you want to do. Obviously, the mentoring, somebody's on you. It's more commitment because you're on there every single week and we're connecting often. If you're doing it, do it yourself, you might have a full-time job and you're kind of somewhat serious about it, but not anybody's really on you day in and day out. So you can kind of slack off a few times here and there. So that's why it's a little bit slower, because there's not somebody that's constantly on you all the time. So hope you make your choice accordingly, what makes sense for you. And, truly appreciate you joining me and sticking with me in this video, because at the end of the day, everything else kind of just falls into place into one of those sections. Whether you're doing like chat rooms and so on, again, you're partly on your own, maybe a little bit of a hybrid model if you're getting some guidance. So it all fits into one of these categories or areas, depending on how you're approaching the education and learning. Everything else is just a medium or way to learn in a different format that makes sense for you. All right. Thanks again. Enjoy the week ahead, and I'll see you next time.